If you were raised by narcissistic parents or other abusive parents or caregivers, you may actually be suffering from CPTSD, which is a complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Welcome, my name is Claire. Today we are going to be defining complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and we're going to be talking about the causes and symptoms of this type of trauma. So this is super important if you have been raised by narcissistic parents. Now, my goal on this channel is to help you if you have been raised by abusive or toxic narcissistic parents or caregivers, and this can cause you long-term anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, low self-worth, difficulty with goals, etc. So while you're here, go ahead, like this video and subscribe with the bell for notifications. It really does help me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of your comments and support. According to NHS.UK, complex post-traumatic stress disorder may be diagnosed in adults or children who have repeatedly experienced traumatic events, such as violence, neglect, or abuse. Complex PTSD is thought to be more severe if there are 5. Number 1, the traumatic events happened early in life. Number 2, the trauma was caused by a parent or caregiver. Number 3, the person experienced the trauma for a long time. Number 4, the person was alone during the trauma. And number 5, there's still contact with the person responsible for the trauma. That will cause complex PTSD to be more severe. If you might have had a parent who would yell at you occasionally, but overall they were a good parent. Or maybe they neglected you here and there because they didn't know how to show their emotions or tell you that they loved you, but maybe overall they were not narcissistic. You could still suffer from trauma from those events because a lot of times we don't realize that as a child, everything is so much scarier and so much bigger. So an adult yelling at you may not be considered abuse in their mind, and it may not be traumatic for them if someone was to yell at them for some reason. But for you as a child, that could have actually been traumatic and very devastating, and you could have absorbed a lot of toxic trauma and fear and beliefs, all surrounding the fact that they yelled at you or didn't tell you that they loved you. Now, that on its own is one thing. Now, if you were raised by an actual narcissistic parent who put themselves above you, who manipulated you for their own gain, who abused you regularly in many ways, gaslighting you, guilt-tripping you, yelling at you, calling you names, neglecting you, all of these things, and basically cutting you off from yourself and your emotions, that is even worse, okay? So that magnifies everything because you have an actual abusive and toxic narcissistic parent. And so you can develop complex PTSD from this ongoing abuse or ongoing neglect that occurs day after day, month after month, year after year. And as a child, you just grow up thinking that this is what you have to deal with. You have to cater to your parents' needs all the time. They never cater to you. You're ignored constantly. You're belittled. You're yelled at. You're ridiculed. And all of this trauma is happening over and over again, and you're absorbing it over and over again. And that causes complex PTSD. So, whereas regular PTSD is often caused by one dramatic or horrific event, such as an accident or a natural disaster or something horrific that you see one time and that absorbs within you, and that is trauma that you can get flashbacks from. But it is different than the complex ongoing trauma that narcissistic parents put upon their children. So the reason that this is so important for you to realize is that you might be holding on to a ton of trauma and a ton of very, very negative beliefs about yourself and about others, about the world, that you have developed from childhood being raised by narcissistic and selfish parents or caregivers. And so for myself, I grew up with extreme depression, extreme anxiety, panic attacks, very, very low self-esteem, self-worth. I was a people pleaser, constantly trying to help others and afraid of their reactions of me. I thought that I had to cater to them. I thought I had to tiptoe around everyone's feelings and do whatever they wanted. My needs were never met. They were never priority. And I just thought I didn't deserve anything. I wasn't good enough. And so the more that I've researched, the more that I realize that when you're raised by narcissistic parents, that is the dynamic that you could very easily develop. So according again to nhs.uk, some symptoms of complex PTSD include feelings of shame or guilt, difficulty controlling your emotions, periods of losing attention or concentration, which is also called dissociation, physical symptoms such as headaches, dizziness, chest pains, and stomach aches, cutting yourself off from friends and family, relationship difficulty, destructive or risky behavior, including self-harm, alcohol or drug use, and suicidal thoughts. So all of those things, when you can think, oh, that's why I have severe anxiety, that's why I am depressed, that's why I have low self-esteem and don't think I have any value, it's because my childhood and my caregivers created this belief system and abused me and neglected me and made me feel that I'm not worthy, that I'm not good enough, and put all this trauma inside of you, put all of this fear inside of you. And when you've been swallowing fear and swallowing trauma and not allowed to express yourself or fully release that trauma, it builds and builds and builds. And that's when your body just can't handle it and you start getting anxiety. You start feeling depressed because think about all this trauma like baggage, like dark, painful, deep baggage that's just like bringing you down into a depression. And so as you grow up, you may not realize why you're depressed or why you're anxious, why you're constantly afraid, you have panic attacks, you get startled, or dissociation where you just tune out. This used to happen to me a lot where I would be in a situation and I would have to tune out because that was the only way for me to kind of regain a sense of self, or even subconsciously just kind of have a zero awareness for a few minutes because I didn't want to deal with the reality in front of me. So it's kind of like a daydreaming or an intense tuning out where you just don't even want to deal with what's in front of you. So as you uncover this and as you realize that, yeah, this happened to me, I suffered from trauma over and over and over as a child and growing up, and it just kept happening over and over again. That is the awareness that you need, because now you can identify where it's coming from, and it's not anymore a mystery. It's not just something that you think you are. You don't just have to identify with being a depressed or anxious person anymore without knowing that, yeah, there is a root cause, there is a reason for this. And so that is empowering in itself. And so that's where the shadow work comes in. That's where the self-love comes in. And that's where self-care comes in, is because now it's time for you. Now that you know that you have suffered from complex PTSD growing up and you've been swallowing and absorbing this trauma over and over and over as a child, now you can finally start to uncover and heal from these things. And this is going to be a painful journey. I have been doing my shadow work and it's been really, really tough. There's been a lot of pain and a lot of deep, dark emotions and memories, but it's been so worth it because the more baggage that you can throw out by crying it out or anger or punching a punching bag or yelling into your pillow or journaling it out, all of that is going to lift you up and you're going to feel better and better and better. And the anxiety and the depression and all those things that are caused by the abuse that you have been through are going to go away. So I have a lot of videos on shadow work. I have a lot of self-love meditations and different things for you guys to help you along your journey. And so I will link those below. And it's also good if you haven't had therapy to get some therapy or get a therapist that you can trust or someone to talk to about these problems. If you don't quite know how to do the shadow work yet, or even in addition to the shadow work, and that can help you to think through and get to the root of your pain and your problems. So I hope that this video helps you. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, remember, you are so powerful. Bye, guys.